Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the February 21st Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I'd like to recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk this morning will be Ms. Karen Robertson. Today's Finance and Audit Committee meeting will be held in accordance with the Community Charter, Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. Question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left for agenda items only. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question respecting an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. Members have been granted the authority to attend electronically, and this morning we have Councillors Brown and Armstrong joining us electronically. Good morning. The first item on the agenda, of course, is the introduction of late items. Ms. Robertson.
Thank you, Your Worship. We just have one this morning, which is under agenda item 7B, and that is replacing the presenters. Mr. Harding, our Deputy CAO General Manager, will be presenting this morning.
Thank you very much. Motion for adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Prino. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Eastmere. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. We have no presentations as such, no delegations, and on to reports. And the first is the Central Vancouver Island Japanese Canadian Legacy Society Heritage and Reconciliation Grant Social Centre, Room 6. Mr. Harding, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Your Worship. Morning, Council. I'm very pleased to bring two reports to Council today on two grant applications. However, we wanted to start off with the actual Japanese Potato Society to do a quick presentation to overview what these programs are about. And Mr. Sugiyama is going to provide that, and then staff will introduce the two reports with the projects.
Very good.
Mr. Sugiyama.
As it's a formal occasion, I won't call you Brian. Welcome, Mr. Sugiyama. Not an unfamiliar face to a public service in the city of Nanaimo.
Thank you. Does this have to be turned on? Oh, it's on. Thank you, Your Worship and members of Council. We have a presentation just to give you a bit of background on our group, the Central Vancouver Island Japanese Canadian Society. And just for those who don't know why it's called, also known as Seven Potatoes. In Japanese, the words nana equates to seven, and imo is potato. So that's why it's quite unique, and it's a great catchy name for us right across this country. So we'll go forward with our presentation. So we are basically a cultural group that promotes Japanese culture and social justice on Central Vancouver Island. And we cooperate on a number of matters of concern to the Japanese Canadian community, and we're undertaking collective action for betterment of social and cultural well-being. One of the opportunities for our members is for their families and friends to meet socially several times per year, and we've had some major events, and I'll speak about those shortly, but to promote better understanding of our Japanese cultural heritage in this city, in this community, and expose others to the culture and promote human rights as a multicultural Canada that we stand in allyship alongside all marginalized people. Some of the photos here is we have had a summer Tanabata celebration, which is on July 7th, the 7th day of the 7th month. And we've also hosted a tour of Japanese Canadians around Vancouver Island. There are significant sites all around the island, and so we've hosted that tour in August. The other items we have had include a dinner of survivors who have gone through the internment process through that still live on Vancouver Island, and our Cherry Blossom Festival, which is coming up very shortly. I understand the cherry blossoms are out in Japan right now. They're quite out in Nanaimo, but we anticipate that to be in April. We have also had our president, Tami Hirasawa, speak at the Hiroshima Day event in November as well. Oh, I'll go back one. We've also hosted a major dinner celebration of New Year's, and that picture up in the upper right is the number of people at our last event that was held at Bevan Park. We've now outgrown the auditorium at Bowen Complex. Some of our collaborative projects, we are working with the Nanaimo Museum on a major traveling exhibit that's going around the country and will arrive here and open on March 15th on Broken Promises, which is on the internment and relocation of many, many Japanese Canadians at the start of World War II, sorry. And we've also hosted a major display at the Nanaimo Art Gallery on the herring psalteries by Cindy Mochizuki. So we'll go forward here. The other thing is that we've been collaborating with a number of groups, and we've presented a presentation on Japanese history in this community in Nanaimo to the Nanaimo Historical Society. And as I said, we also participated last year or 2 years ago on a Give Birth Love Tooth exhibit that was held at the Art Gallery and at the Nanaimo Cemetery on Bowen Road. Most recently, as I mentioned, the permanent exhibit is now being set up for the history of Japanese Canadians in Nanaimo, and there's going to be a permanent exhibit as well as a traveling exhibit, which will open at the same time on March 15th, open to the public starting March 16th. What we've worked with the city is the planting of cherry blossom trees. We feel that this is an item that is significant in that it is indicative of Japanese culture, and we have been fundraising our Seven Potatoes group to put right now in the neighborhood of 25 trees in Bowen Park along the roadway of Bowen Road on the west side of Bevan Park, as well as we planted trees in some select parks. We also hope to do more of that as we go forward, and we've contracted the city parks staff to do that, and we raise the money that costs to purchase those trees and plant them and maintain them. And we're going to go forward here, and that's just one of the plantings. I see some familiar faces in this photo, and one of the things that we're working towards is we're receiving, and there's been significant funds set aside by the provincial government, and through the Japanese Canadian Legacies grants, we can receive an infrastructure grant in the amount of $250,000, and that doesn't build anything significant, but we are renovating one of the rooms at Bevan Social Center, and we also received a grant to start up a taiko drumming group, which we think is significant in Nanaimo. And what we will do with that monies is do the sound dampening in that room, put some select decorative items that would be on the walls that will be indicative of Japanese culture as well. That room, and we are only looking to use a partial point of time in that room at Bevan Complex, and what we will do is make that available for regular bookings through Parks, Recreation, and Culture. This would make available some much-needed rehearsal space for all cultural groups, and it would be one of the items that is probably a need item in the city. So we're seeking council approval for a license agreement between the City of Nanaimo, and we've been working very diligently with your staff, and the Seven Potatoes for use of that room after renovation. So that's our first item, and our second item, and that's at Bevan Park. Room 6 is at the far north end of the complex, adjacent to that parking lot at the north end of Bevan Park. We are also working with the city and staff for the purposes of acquiring a heritage grant which will acknowledge the community that existed in Nanaimo along the waterfront, along Stewart Avenue. And there was also a Japanese language school that existed in that community. So what we're looking to do is install a Japanese garden. We've got a couple sites in mind and going through all the requirements for the city and for other items along the waterfront, a couple sites in mind. And what we would feature would be a meditative site where visitors can stop, learn about herring salteries that existed on Sayutsan, and brought economic growth to Nanaimo in the early 1900s and 1930s. And Nanaimo was known as the world's herring capital at that time. These interpretive displays will also talk about the thriving business community that existed along Seward Avenue, which included the language school on the corner of Juniper and Stewart. So the site will be the first signage to acknowledge this community that existed, a very vibrant community that existed prior to World War II. And what we want to do is provide that acknowledgement. We've had a couple sessions with people, and many have ancestors who have lived in Nanaimo but don't see anything that acknowledges that. And so what we want to do is use that $400,000 heritage grant to build that and create that special site. Basically, it would tell the story of the Japanese Canadians who were forcibly uprooted from Nanaimo and various other communities in BC, displaced, incarcerated, dispossessed, and exiled, some of which did return to Japan. And only 5% of the Japanese Canadians returned following the war. The grant will improve some amenities along the waterfront, and will bring tourism dollars, we hope, in people who will come to see this site from all over BC. We will also include some public art and a safe space to gather and meet friends and family. We thank you for this opportunity to, I'm just going to see if there's anything else. There isn't anything else, to present these projects for Council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Mr. Harding, did you want to say something?
No, just if Council's finished with Mr. Sugiyama, we have just a couple comments, and then we can deal with the two reports.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you, thank you, Mr. Sugiyama, very much for attending this morning and for presenting these projects. I did have one minor question, and it's, I think, directed towards Mr. Harding more than yourself, but I think you did partially answer it. I heard you say that the use of room 6 at Bevan Park would not totally preclude that room being rented out for other purposes, because I believe there is a daycare that uses it for some days a week right now. Mr. Harding, could you just comment or confirm?
Thank you, Worship, to Councillor Thorpe. The daycare is the room next to it, but this would, right now, the agreement would be the society would have up to 21 hours of use during the week, and the rest of the week that's open for programming, as Mr. Sugiyama mentioned, and the improvements would benefit other cultural groups and other groups utilizing that room.
That's great. Thank you very much for clarifying that. And I'll just comment, if I may, Your Worship, that I think I've said before, I think it's really important that the city recognizes the contributions of numerous cultural groups that have helped create the city that we know today as Nanaimo, and certainly first and foremost among those groups would be the Japanese, along with the Italians and Chinese and Germans and many others. But I think more recognition is warranted, and I applaud your efforts, so thank you. And thank you for the cherry blossom trees in Bowen Park as well.
Thank you. We hope they all bloom for many years to come, and we certainly anticipate our goal is to have 100 trees rather than just the 25 right now.
Thank you very much. So we've got Tammy on the screen as well. Is she going to comment this morning?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for letting us present. Hi, I'm Tammy Hirasawa. I'm the president of the Central Vancouver Island Japanese Canadian Society. We've been working really hard with the city staff, and we appreciate all the cooperation that's gone on between city staff and Seven Potatoes. So we've got the two projects going on right now that we're looking for city approval. If anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to to take.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perino?
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you. Thank you for your presentation. I've been to Japan, and it's beautiful, breathtaking. The question that I have actually is, there was the pottery group that uses that room, I understand, and I just wondered if they were going to be displaced, or if, will they be able to use the room? Pottery tends to be a messy kind of activity, that's why I'm asking.
Thank you, Worship, to Council Perino. We don't see any displacement of use for the building.
Okay.
A lot of the pottery is being happening at Bowen now, but there is still some happening there. I don't see any displacement with it. And
so my next question is, with the grant of $250,000, you're eligible for that. Any word on whether or not you're going to get it? Is there any assurance that we're going to be able to get this for you?
We're in the last phases of getting the required items, and which includes today your the lease agreement that's with the city.
Perfect.
Just a comment,
yes.
Councillor, through the chair, is that that was a number of years ago, way back to my time when I worked for the city, when that was, as Richard says, probably even before his time with the city, when it was the pottery room was relocated to Bowen Park. And it's at the lower floors of Bowen Park. So it's been many years since
Thank you for that.
Pottery used that room 6.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. It's just in the report, and so that's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
And then my next question was, if it goes over the cost of the $250,000, are you going? My concern is, now it seems every project seems to go over the cost estimate. And I'm just wondering how you're feeling about that.
We're pretty confident we will meet those budget requirements. Excellent. Because we've been working and working with the construction staff of the city. So we are merely not changing the structure of the room, but more the amenities in it and some storage cupboards. So plus putting carpet on the tile floor and things like that. So it may be another phase of something else for more expansion. I can't say that won't happen, but right now we're pretty confident we'll stay within that for that capital infrastructure grant.
Okay, sounds like you're very prepared, so that's great news. I'm very much in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no further questions, we have separate motions, and we should deal with them in that order. Move in the first motion, seconded Councillor Thorpe, and that is that we, Council, approve a 5-year license of use agreement with an option of subsequent renewals, etc., conditional upon approval of the Japanese Canadian Legacies grant application. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we have a second motion respecting the joint grant application for the $400,000. Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Eastmere. Again, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. I was going to say, don't we wish that everything was just as popular as this that comes before Council in the morning? Mr. Harding, sorry.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to mention our staff's appreciation for the Society. It was a group that reached out to us early and often, well in advance of these grants coming forward. They were very patient with us as we went through a number of different types of options for improvements, with us, sometimes our eyes being bigger than our plates, so some projects much bigger than we could come back to Council with, but really pleased with the 2 projects that we did come back to Council, and very appreciative of the Society's eagerness to work with us, and again, early on in the process, so that we could be well prepared when the grants did come up.
Thank you very much, and if I just make comment, on behalf of the City of Nanaimo, we are grateful to the Seven Potatoes Society, as I refer to it constantly, for all the work that's been done to enhance this community and keep alive Japanese culture in the Central Island. And I can't help but think that maybe Maz Fakawa might be listening somewhere about this, Maz and Stan, who played such a crucial role in recording the history that many people tend to forget who weren't alive at the time. So thank you very much, everyone. Much appreciated this morning. Ms. Davis, I'm sorry, you're no moment of glory here. You just get to come up to the front, and so be it. Thank you for attending, everyone, on this particular one. The next is funding for assistive hearing devices. something I could use on occasion. Mr. Harding.
Thank you, Worship. We normally just wouldn't bring these kind of reports to council, but given the fact that we have a very active advisory committee on accessibility and inclusiveness, and this was one of the work projects that they had, and council already has funding in the budget. We just want to bring this back for council's endorsement of proceeding with this hearing project. But again, this is typically we would not bring it back like this. It would be maybe an information report, but we still would like council's approval to proceed with the project.
Thank you very much. Anyone care to make the recommended motion? Move Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmens. Any need for discussion? Questions? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is a little more pedestrian, the 7th Street Pump Station. Mr. Sims, back to basics.
Thanks, Your Worship. If it were pedestrian, I think it would be sidewalks, but this one is our bread and butter, which is sewage. You may recognize that the 7th Street Pump Station was recently upgraded to allow for growth in the Chase River area. And the station that was built was sized to accept future growth. And so this project in front of you is that future growth. I will note that it's happening a lot sooner than we thought it would, partially due to growth, but also partially due to the rainstorm that we saw in November of 21, where it actually overwhelmed the system. A number of, not ideal, but a number of connections allow rainwater into the system. And so the main focus of the report is increasing the budget for this particular project. The rise in price is sort of twofold. One of them is due to the complexity of changing the pumps or installing pumps in the middle of a live working station is significantly more complex than our engineering firm originally thought. That's one piece of it. And the other is that aluminum and stainless fabrication associated came in a lot higher than expected as well. So one of the other things that is outlined in the report is that this is partially funded from DCCs due to growth. However, the report notes that it should be okay given the anticipated contributions for sewer DCCs, but there may be maybe a need to dip into the sewer reserves instead of the DCC fund. So that'd be a little bit unusual, but that's we don't think that's going to be an issue, but we just wanted to highlight that for council. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong has a question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Could you just comment, is this common for projects not just in Nanaimo but all over to be going up because there are escalating costs that weren't anticipated when the bids were made?
Thanks, Your Worship. That's a really good question, and I would say it's been common over the last several years, or the last few years, during and post-pandemic, that we've seen a crazy escalation all over North America, certainly. This particular project is more about this complexity that I spoke of, with some of that additional cost associated, due to inflation. And I think the good news that we're starting to see, not only the consumer price index is starting to come down, but construction costs are starting to flatline anyhow. And our projects are coming in more and more consistently on budget, which is also good news.
Thank you.
Some good news on the horizon. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you to Mr. Sims. I'm just wondering, sorry for the obvious question, but going up in the pump size, size that you're going to bring it to, is that going to be enough to carry us through the future, given what we expect with rainfall and the growth of the city at the same time?
It's an excellent question, Your Worship. I think at this point it'll serve for certainly the next decade or two. But the pressures on growth in the Chase River area, not only from this new, from the conversion of the D&D property to reserve lands, the growth that desired at VIU, as well as the unknown impact of the transit-oriented area as a result of the new housing bills in the province, is going to place a lot of pressure on our downstream sewer system. So the final answer to that question is still to be determined.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. If no further questions, would someone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Hemmons. Discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is the Heritage Facade Grant, 200 Commercial Street. Mr. Holm and Mr. Scholberg here this morning. Good morning. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, and good morning. These items, the next couple of items, as you mentioned, Heritage Planner Chris Scholberg is here to take any questions as well, but I'll briefly present what's proposed here. So the city has a long-standing program, a Heritage Facade Grant Program that helps support property owners in maintaining and increasing the longevity of heritage buildings in the community. A couple of good examples here, 2 applications to the grant program. The first is item E, a Heritage Facade Grant for 200 Commercial Street. That's a building at the corner of Commercial and Bastion. And you can see it on the, thank you for bringing it up on the screen overhead. The proposal here is a grant application of $7,770 for repainting of the building's exterior. Total project cost is estimated at $15,540. Recommendation is to approve the request. Thanks. And happy to take any questions. And as I mentioned, Chris Scholberg, Heritage Planner, is here as well if you have specific questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Scholberg or Mr. Holm? Councillor Perino.
Sorry, Your Worship. Just a question. So we're going to put in this money. Does the building owner put in any of their own funds?
Yes, I'll speak to that, and Chris can jump in if needed. But yeah, the total project cost in this case estimated is $15,540. So the owner would pay for the total project cost, and the city's contribution is $7,770 through the grant.
Good. Just wanted that to be clear. Thank you so much.
If no further questions, moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is another Heritage Facade Grant, 403 Fitzwilliam Street. Mr. Holm again, please.
Thank you again. And yeah, this is another a fine example of a heritage building in the this time in the Old City Quarter. In this case, the project scope is a little bit larger. I'll touch on that briefly, and again, Mr. Scholberg can answer questions if needed. What's proposed here is installation of replicated wood siding on an upper portion of the building, the parapet, as well as replacement of the building's roof. In this case, the building is, as I mentioned, in the Old City Quarter, corner of Fitzwilliam and Wesley Street. The total project cost is estimated at $91,380. That's the estimate that the owners provided for the work. The city would be, if the grant request is approved, be contributing $12,230 through the Heritage Facade Grant Program. And happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you also to Mr. Scholberg for the thorough report on this particular one. Any questions? If not, moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. And we're on to permissive tax exemption application and other grant request. Ms. Mercer, good morning.
Good morning. The Nanaimo Men's Resource Centre has applied for a 2025 PTE to be put on the PTE bylaw for 2025, as well as a 2024 cash grant. Ms. Slater is here to give some brief background as well as answer any questions that you have.
Ms. Slater, good morning.
Good morning, Your Worship and Council. So the city has received a permissive tax exemption or PTE application from the Nanaimo Men's Resource Centre, and they are requesting an exemption for the part of the building or the unit that they lease at 418D Fitzwilliam Street. So I was honestly surprised when I went to look at the PTE list because I thought that they were already on the list. This organization has been operating since 2001 and is not yet on the PTE bylaw. The Men's Center provides support and educational programs, specialized counseling, as well as coaching and advocacy services, and they run workshops and peer groups out of that Fitzwilliam location. And although the name of the organization is primarily directed towards men, there are similar organizations that focus primarily on women's support services, with the goal of providing supports and resources that will ultimately benefit all members of the community. The application was received in September 2023, right after we brought forward the PTE bylaw that would be for the 2024 property taxation year. So that is why it wasn't able to be on the 2024 exemption bylaw. And so staff is bringing forward this application as early as we possibly could in this fiscal year, so that the Finance and Audit Committee could consider a 2025 PTE, as well as consider a cash grant to assist with the costs of the 2024 property taxes for this organization. The estimated cost of their property taxes for 2024 is $3,600, and we do have an available $5,000 PTE cash grants budget for that amount, so that would leave approximately $1,400 remaining if this cash grant request was approved. And with that, I will leave it to the Finance and Audit Committee for a decision.
Thank you very much. I'm familiar with this organization, and they rely an awful lot on volunteers and very little funding, and provide an important service in the community. Councillors Thorpe and Hemmens in order.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, if I may. Yes, I support this organization as well. I think it does good work in the community. I have no problem at all with the permissive tax exemption going ahead for 2025, that they fit the criteria. From my time on this committee some years back, though, I do have a question about the cash grant, because my recollection is that cash grants would be awarded specifically for certain operating costs or office expenses that an organization might have. We seem to be simply giving this money because they were too late applying for last year's tax exemption. And I didn't see in the report any specific use that this money would be put towards. So could staff comment on that, please?
Oh, definitely through the chair to you, Councillor Thorpe. Historically, based on the permissive tax exemptions that I've seen and that I've witnessed, I unfortunately have never been part of the formal grants advisory committee that previously existed. I've only ever seen cash grants go towards the cost of property taxes. I mean, I certainly could investigate how previous cash grants were allocated.
Thank you. I see Ms. Mercer wishes to add something.
Ms. Mercer.
Through the chair to Councillor Thorpe. So we have a couple of different grant streams. One is there is a PTE cash budget, and that I believe is the $5,000.
Yeah.
And then we have other grants which can be used to apply for, some capital funding, some emergency funding, and things like that. So there are two different grant streams that organizations can apply for.
All right, thank you. That's what I'm thinking of. Well, I was certainly happy to support this. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. Similar questioning. I also support the PTE. I'm just curious, though, we have an envelope of funds for people who miss the deadline to apply for PTE, and does this get exhausted every year? Like, is this something that the community relies upon? Because I feel like if we have a deadline, we have a deadline.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Hemmens, absolutely. This $5,000 fund gets exhausted every year. Usually it's quite early in the year as well.
Thank you. I'm just questioning, having an extra source of funds for people who miss a deadline. I feel like if we're not communicating the deadline appropriately, we should do that rather than have funds available. But I'm happy to support as is, because this is the process and system we have in place, but it just seems a bit lengthy to me or unnecessary. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. Anyone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Slater. The next is the quarterly budget transfer report. Ms. Mercer, please.
Thank you. So this is the fourth quarter report for 2023, and it outlines budget transfers that create a new project are over $100,000 in transfers, or creates a delay or cancellation of a project. And I believe Mr. Chmielewski is here if you have any questions regarding any of these. Wrong person. Sorry, Wendy Full is here. He's got a report coming up, sorry.
Thank you.
I think I gave him a heart attack.
I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, Councillor Himmons, bless you.
Thank you. Oh, well, thank you. Through you to staff. I'm curious about what the wash cars are. Never heard that term.
Thank you, Worship. And I just lost a bet to somebody who's not here today.
I can guess. What is it, Richard?
They're washrooms, portable washrooms, or yeah.
They're portable washrooms that we call wash cars.
Yeah. Trailers.
So I'm just questioning the title of the stadium district where we've got transfers going to wash cars. But those are,
Yeah.
those are portable
Thank you, Worship.
washrooms.
That's the industry of how they call these facilities.
Okay, great, thank you. And I do, I do just want to note the, bless you, the private contribution from Nanaimo BMX. That's worth noting, and I appreciate that. So that's great.
Yes, it is. Very good.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. If no further questions, thanks for the report. And the next one is quarterly purchasing report, single and sole source purchases in excess of $250,000 and instances of non-compliance purchases. Ms. Mercer.
Thank you. Again, this is the fourth quarter for 2023, and the report outlines the two items, the single and sole source purchases and the purchases over $250,000. And Ms. Rushton and other staff are here if you have any questions.
Yeah.
Councillor Himmons, please.
Thank you.
And thank you for attending.
File number 3524. I have a vague recollection of this, but can I just be reminded $500,000 to the school district for a program? Was that part of a larger basket of funding that we used for the youth resiliency? Just trying to recall it's $500,000 to the school district.
Pretty sure it's that.
Through the chair to Councillor Himmons, that was part of the grant funding we have for the, I want to call it the Guns and Gangs grant, but I might not have the name of the grant program exactly correct.
Thank you for confirming.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Again, thank you for the report. Ms. Rushton, off to this morning. And we're on to the 2023 surplus allocation.
So
always a happy moment in my view.
It's a good problem to have. The 2023 surplus is just over $9.6 million for all three funds. Mr. Bailey is here to talk about what some high-level drivers of this are, as well as what staff recommendations are to allocate that surplus to.
Good morning, Your Worship and Council. So as Ms. Mercer suggested, I'm going to walk you through the surplus for 2023. So after all these asks for money, I'm going to come to you with some extra money in the pot. Before I get into the report, I just wanted to take this opportunity to give a shout out to the finance staff. So this time of year end is a stressful time. They work 6-day weeks and long days to get the year-end work all put together and preparations for our audit. And just wanted to give a shout out to my group.
Very kind.
On to the report. So our KPMG audit starts on March 4th, and part of the process of putting the financial statements together is to come to you and to give you a run through of our surplus and then also allocate that surplus to reserves. So the 2023 operational surplus is $9.6 million and is reported across 3 different funds, so general, sewer, and water. The general fund surplus is $8.7 million. This represents 4.6% of the general operating expenditures budget. The larger drivers of this number is first, the RCMP contract. We had savings of $1.7 million when compared to the budget, which is due to a number of member vacancies that we have right now in the RCMP. Second is our investment income returns. So we had 1.4 million more than we planned this past year in 2023. And that's largely due to, GICs that we invest in, a lot of them came due that were like between 1% and 2%. And we were able to get really good rates, like in the neighborhood of 6 to 6.5% locked in for a number of years, which is great because it will take pressure off taxation for years to come. The biggest component to surplus is wages and benefits. So there's many vacancies throughout the city, and that contributes to $4.9 million in surplus. And that would be vacant positions, and the city's having a difficult time getting bodies in those positions, but we always budget to have all of our FTEs in place. We can't budget less than having those people working, so 4.9 million is a lot of money.
If I may ask, can you give us any idea, what I'll call collective bargaining positions, union positions versus management of that 4.9? I mean, I know we're having trouble filling all kinds of positions, as is every employer everywhere in the economy, but I'm just curious if you can offer any comment on this.
I think it's a mixture of both, but it's a mixture of both. I don't have the numbers in front of me for the percentages, but I know there's definitely management positions and QP and fire.
Okay, and Councillor Armstrong has a question as well. Please.
Yeah, just back to the RCMP contract. So that money will be kept separate for when their negotiations are through, and I understand they're going to arbitration now in May because they couldn't settle.
Yeah, so the contract, through the chair to Councillor Armstrong, the contract ended in March 2023. The RCMP did send the city notification of an estimated amount to accrue for that at year end, which we have accrued that already, so that's expensed in the financial statements. But that being said, in years prior, we have followed those letters to a T and also come up significantly short in the past, and so we do want to have an extra pot of money for that in the future.
Yeah, I was just going to say add at least 7% on to what the RCMP and from E Division tells you, because they're out by that every year. Thank you.
Thank you. Please carry on.
So staff proposed that 1.7 million of the RCMP contract surplus be allocated to the RCMP contract reserve. This reserve is being used to offset some of the space needs costs for the detachment, and like we just discussed, is also being used for RCMP contract costs that exceed the budget estimates each year. $1.2 million of this general operating surplus is required to top up the general financial stability reserve to its required threshold as per our reserve policy. This reserve is used to mitigate the risk of unknown expenditures in the future or any emergencies. Staff also proposed that 2.87 million of the general operating surplus be allocated to the Special Initiatives Reserve. And we have three things in mind in terms of this allocation. So $870,000 of this surplus is being used as a contingency for 2024 project overruns. And this was as directed by Council in October. In addition, $500,000 of this allocation can be used to help provide support for the unhoused in 2024. Lastly, staff recommend that the remaining $1.5 million allocated to the Special Initiatives Reserve be used to increase the 2024 budget for the South End Community Centre land project. Staff also proposed that $500,000 of the general operating...
Councillor Hemmons has a question.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry to interrupt. And I apologize that this question actually just came to me. How much did we spend from this reserve on our unhoused population in 2023? I'm trying to gauge if 500,000 is going to be adequate. I don't think it is, based on what we've spent this year, if we're going to match. I'm sorry, I didn't provide that question earlier.
Through the chair to Councillor Hemmons. So we had a couple different programs in 2023. We did the daytime warming centers, and that was probably in the 400 to 450,000. And we did reallocate funds from a project, the asset retirement obligation fund project that came in under budget. And then we also had the breakfast program, and I don't recall off the top of my head the total cost for that, but staff was figuring with the 500,000, should council wish to do a daytime warming center over the 2024-2025 winter, based on what we spent this year, we thought that was sufficient funds with some wiggle room for if there was something else you wanted to do, or if you wanted to look at cooling centers during the summer. So we did bump up the budget from what your actuals were from the daytime warming center this winter.
Thank you. And the money that we used to provide or to support the food programs, did it also come from this reserve?
Sorry, I didn't hear. Oh, the food program was funded from, we had a grant for a portion of it, the Strengthening Communities, the second grant, and then we also reallocated funding from the Daytime Resource Center project to support the breakfast program.
Which is now we're putting 500,000 into for the actual daytime, the potential of a daytime warming center.
Yes, we're allocating, we're suggesting you allocate this 500,000, and then it gives you some flexibility to look at a variety of initiatives, but we want to make sure it was at least sufficient to fund a daytime warming center if you wish to go that direction for the 2024-2025 winter
Excellent.
season.
Thank you.
Mr. Bailey, please.
Thank you. So lastly, staff proposed that remaining $2.4 million of general fund operating surplus be allocated to general capital. That will allow for funding of future projects. This reserve provides the most flexibility for funding general projects in the future.
Sorry, Mr. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question about whether it's possible to be using some of these funds for some of the projects we've been looking at, like the fixing the fire tower so that it's not burning wood and burning natural gas, or whether it could be allocated towards the portion of the Nanaimo Operations Center for the walkway around the park, or other projects like that. I just see that there's a fair amount of money here. I'm not sure if we could lower taxes with it either, but I do know that there's some urgent projects that we need to get done, and I'm just curious about whether we can allocate funds that way. Thanks.
Through the chair to Councillor Manley, you read staff's mind. That is exactly what we had in mind when we were looking at surplus allocation. Staff will be coming back to council with options for the Nanaimo Operations Center and how we potentially could move forward. So we did put this money into the General Capital Reserve so that we can come back with some options on using that money to help move that project forward should council wish to proceed with the project.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's pretty hard to get ahead of staff.
Okay, on to sewer. So the sewer fund 2023 operating surplus is $519,000. This represents 9% of sewer operating expenditures budget. This surplus is mainly due to higher than planned user fees, along with wage and benefit savings due to position vacancies. The Sewer Financial Stability Reserve requires a top-up of $100,000 to reach its minimum balance threshold as per the reserve policy, and staff recommend that the remaining $419,000 be transferred to the Sewer Reserve to fund future sewer projects. The Water Fund, the 2023 operating surplus is $395,000. This represents 2.6% of the water operating expenditures budget, excuse me. This surplus is mainly due to higher than budgeted user fees. The Water Financial Stability Reserve also requires a top-up of $49,000 to reach the minimum balance threshold to meet the policy, and staff recommend that the remaining $346,000 be transferred to the Water Reserve to be used to fund future water projects. So staff are looking for the committee to approve the surplus allocation as outlined in the report, and also approve amending the 2024 to 2028 financial plan for final to increase the budget for the South End Community Center land project by $1.5 million. We are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions for staff? Councillor Gesselbrock, pardon me, Councillor Brown, sorry.
Honest mistake, Your Worship. Thank you. Just a quick question. We've got a lot of projects, big capital projects, and I would like to have a discussion at some point around the General Financial Stability Reserve and potentially borrowing and utilizing from that. Seems we got a lot of money there. It wasn't accessed during COVID. Some provincial fund transfers. I think it might be overly conservative and something that we can actually borrow from ourselves.
Sorry, there's some kind of background noise going on.
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship. I am in a busy place. But my question really is, we've got a lot of projects that have been identified, but there's unallocated. Really, they're all underfunded. And so my concern is little bits here for the RCMP building, little bits here for the South End Community Center, yet we know Nanaimo Operations Center, or Public Works Yards. We want to see that proceed in some capacity. My question is there going to be an opportunity to actually have a discussion about picking and choosing and getting one across the line rather than inching a bunch forward and not necessarily finding maybe success in a timeline that we could just by choosing one and getting it done?
Ms. Mercer.
Through the chair to Councillor Brown. So we are planning on coming back to the Finance and Audit Committee in March with a discussion on all things project plan, so that we can have some discussion at that point. Right now, with some of these allocations, say specifically for the South End Community Center, that is in relation to the land purchase and some ancillary costs that relate to that. But there is an opportunity to have more project plan discussions in March. So I hope that answers Councillor Brown's comment.
It does. Thanks. Thanks, Ms. Mercer. Generally supportive of anything here. I will be voting against this recommendation, though, as I just don't think we should be adding to the General Financial Stability Reserve. Rather, I think we should be going into special initiatives reserves for greater flexibility. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I was just going to say I agree with Councillor Brown. I think we need to start looking at one project instead of doing little pots and pieces here. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just a question through you to Ms. Mercer. So, just hearing what the last two councillors have talked about, should we decide to move money at a, say in March for a single or two projects, whatever, can these funds can be easily moved over?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Perino, yes, like we can move funds. Many of these, I think there's only one that's a statutory reserve. The other are operating, okay. So there is flexibility there.
Okay, so the move today, this is important today because of the timing, is that right?
It is important because we need to get the financial statements finished.
That's right.
And okay. This is the last piece of the financial statements.
Okay. Yeah. So this doesn't mean, as Councillor Brown has said, this is not necessarily the direction that we'll take. It's just for our financial work that has to be done in a timely fashion. Thank you.
We're bearing the money, but we haven't lost the treasure map.
Exactly.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks. Just a reminder, which reserve is the statutory one that we can't move out of?
Through the chair to Councillor Gesselbrock, the property purchases, the $500,000 is a statutory reserve, so that would be restricted for future property purchases. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do of the same mind as Councillor Brown. I think, in March we're going to have to make some decisions, and I think a more concentrated effort on, moving particular project across the line is what's going to be needed, but given that we can kind of move things around anyhow, it doesn't really matter, so I can support this, but definitely will be looking forward to that conversation in March.
Thank you. If no further questions, there is a recommended motion. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, Councillors Eastmere, Gesselbrock, Hemmens, Mayor Krogh, Councillors Thorpe, Perino, and those opposed, Councillors Brown and Armstrong and Manley. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And Ms. Mercer, the final item, Active Communities Grant Program, please.
Thank you. So the city has applied for 2 projects under the Active Community Grant Program. And now Mr. Chmielewski is here to answer any questions and go over some high-level points of the program.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I would just like to announce that the city has submitted 2 grant applications to the Active Communities Grant Program. The program currently offers $50,000 to communities with applications meeting the following criteria. The project activities must increase opportunities for physical activity, must demonstrate planned collaboration with either the regional health authority or community groups over the project timeline, and be complete within 18 months from receiving grant funding. The application deadline was February 5th, and funding will be awarded and announced in April. 2 projects that were shortlisted for the grant program were the West Haven Playground Redevelopment Project and the Pleasant Valley School Bike Rack and Shelter Project. The West Haven Playground Redevelopment Project is currently in the 2024-2028 financial plan. It has a budget of $167,800 and is funded through Parks DCC's General Asset Management Fund and General Revenue. Successful grant application would reduce city funds, which could then be reallocated to future projects. The second project is the Bike Rack and Shelter Project. The city is planning on working in partnership with the school district to supply and install bike racks at the school to basically increase the opportunity for students and staff to commute to school by bike. This project is currently not in the 2024-2028 financial plan though. So a successful grant application of $31,500 would allow the city to undertake an opportunity that's not currently in the financial plan. And to sum up, the city is actively pursuing revenues such as grants to offset project costs, as well as unfunded project costs that benefit our community. And if the committee has any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer.
Thank you very much. And I see Councillor Thorpe is first off the mark.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Comment about the bike
no,
racks,
I'm not going to
sure.
comment about the bike racks, but I'm sure that you will at some point.
Got that right.
As you jab me in the side with your finger. Actually, my question was regarding the other project, the West Haven Playground redevelopment, through you, if I may, I think to Mr. Harding, because when I read this, it seemed to me that this would align with the Partners in Parks funding projects. And is this something totally different, Mr. Harding? Or is there not a neighborhood group that's willing to take this park on?
Thank you, Worship, to Councillor Thorpe. This would probably augment that group. It's actually an asset that's, West Haven's been there for a number of years. It would be a renewal of the older equipment that needs to be replaced. We'd still work with the neighborhood association or the neighborhood group on the details of what would go on with the playground. Like all neighborhood playgrounds, we always work with the associations.
But if I may, Your Worship, you don't see this at this point, you don't see this coming forward as a Partners in Park project asking for funding?
Not if these, sorry, Worship, to Councillor Thorpe, not if these funds were secured through this grant.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perino, then Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you. And again, I'll leave the bike one to you because I know you're going to comment on that one. But my question was more, so with West Haven, you said it was oh, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of the term that you used, but it was the one that was the most needed. Is that correct? Because it's just that as I've been out to some of the parks now over the past year, you realize there's a lot of work that's needed in many of the parks, and I just wondered, this one was shortlisted as being the most needed. Is that correct?
Well, through Your Worship, through Your Worship to Councillor Perino.
Thank you.
Just in reviewing the projects with staff, this was one that kind of met all the criteria in the application and also met the criteria of working in collaboration with the community group. So that is why this one was chosen for the grant application.
So this 167,000, will that be it for them then as well? That will cover off the whole work of the project? I'm just thinking of those other parks. When will they get money? You know, when are they going to get their turn?
Well, I guess that was the budget that was set aside for 2024 to
Yes.
redevelop this project.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to talk about bike racks. Sorry, Councillor Thorpe. So I fully support these two applications. I think they're great. I am curious though, can I please be reminded of the process for how we determine which schools get bike racks and how they're funded typically if they're not part of a grant stream like this?
Mr. Sims.
I apologize, I should have preceded that.
Riding to the rescue, so to speak.
Thanks, Your Worship. And to Councillor Hemmons, in this particular case, it was the results of the successful Metro Drive and then the number of students that we saw doing, they call them bike to school or bike buses. So they're actually ganging up in bike gangs, as it were. And the street is so safe now that we have cars can go on. We have a number of, with apologies to Councillor Thorpe, we have a number of students actually using Metro Drive to the point where Pleasant Valley School is overwhelmed with bikes a good part of the year. And so they've sort of pleaded, the PAC has pleaded for some support in getting these bike racks. And we thought this was a happy problem.
Right, I agree. Totally happy problem. My question is about the process. So absolutely, we improved Metro Drive. It increased active transportation at that school. Presumably, we're going to do that in other areas. So is it just kind of the school with the biggest need?
Exactly.
Because we do have limited resources, and then also confirming that it is the city's responsibility to purchase the bike racks?
Well, I think, Your Worship, this is not the city's responsibility. This is a nice thing to do for the school and to support them in their active school travel program. And we do work with a number of schools and the school district and their PACs as well on the active travel program. So whatever sort of bubbles to the surface out of that. In this case, it was certainly such a sudden change for the school that to support them, we felt this was a nice thing to do.
I think it's a great project, and I hope you get quoted in the media as talking about bike gangs on Metro. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, Mr. Sims, I wonder if you can advise the Active Communities Grant Program, which is where this money comes from, administered by the BC Alliance for Healthy Living. Is it federal and provincial money, or just provincial, or just federal, or do we know?
My understanding is it's just provincial.
Just provincial. So, I mean, in fairness, and just remind everyone, it's not costing us any money. We're simply helping apply for monies that will assist the significant number of cyclists who are now cycling to Pleasant Valley School along the safe environs of Metro Drive after its improvements by the city led by Mr. Sims' team. I won't say anything more as out of respect and affection for Councillor Thorpe, but it is wonderful to hear a success story. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Absolutely. I think this is a lily we can gild and an example of, putting in necessary infrastructure that gets kids out active and using their bicycles. And look, we've got a problem where there's not enough bike space at a school. And I think, if we're successful getting this grant, I think a lot of attention and publicity should be put around this because this is sort of the direction that we need to move. And it's a very clear example of success. Thank you.
Nothing further on this, no further comments. Thank you very much to staff this morning for this. What a lovely way to finish the morning. Unless there's any other business, and I'm assuming nothing on the question sheet, motion for adjournment, please. Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, everybody, for attendance this morning and the work.